Hello and welcome to the first episode of our Talk Fintech podcast series. Joining me today, we have two of the leading experts in the space. We have Dr. Gauci from GTG Advocates and Mr. Falzon from Ganado Advocates. And today we're going to be discussing Malta as a jurisdiction, the trends that we're seeing in the fintech space, and so much more. I don't know, before we start off, maybe a quick introduction, guys, of what your experience has been so far in the sector. Ian?
Shall I start? Okay. Well, my experience in the sector, particularly on digital innovation and financial services, has been, it's a crescendo. So many people think that we started this when crypto was there. Actually, we started before. I think we saw a culmination during the crypto years, VFA. Now it's becoming even, and I think Paul can attest to this, is becoming more vibrant, extremely competitive, and we're seriously seeing the fruits of what we planned way back in 2014, 2015. It's extremely dynamic. So I think it's something which ultimately augurs well for the Maltese financial systems ecosystem, financial services ecosystem, and as well for the Maltese economy. Maybe Paul can elaborate as well on this point.
First of all, thank you for having us, Mark. I think, adding on to what Ian has said, I think I will go back slightly further in the sense that in my previous life as a regulator, when we used to see an application coming in for an EMI and PSP, everybody was like, wow, this is good, this is not, but things were fairly simple back then. Fast forward, I would say around 12 to 13 years, things have become so complex that now we're seeing a subset of the fintech space being a very important part of Malta's ecosystem. And obviously this then culminated in us as a jurisdiction going through the VFA framework, being slightly ahead of the curve in the sense that we sort of anticipated what was to come, and now obviously we're reaping the benefits of Malta's work.
Agreed. So, I mean, just to maybe start off with a really obvious question, you might say, for people like yourselves who are heavily involved in the industry. It's a very basic question, but the reality is that the term fintech nowadays has become a little bit of a buzzword. A lot of people, when I speak to people, they guess I'm getting involved in fintech and so on, but without really knowing exactly what we're talking about when we're saying fintech. So maybe for those viewers who are very, new to the area, when we say fintech, what do we really mean exactly, and what are the main subsectors of fintech that we are seeing becoming quite popular in Malta?
Okay. Well, maybe the term fintech as coined could be, it's not relatively that new.
No.
It's been there, even in Malta, we've been working, as a matter of fact, we have a very solid fintech strategy. We have now a new reiteration of a fintech strategy, which will include as well AI. And it could be as well something which would be as a standalone from the fintech, Malta's national fintech strategy. However, I mean, we've been at this for quite some time. I think the issue with fintech is that a lot of people assimilate the term fintech with a financial service or with a financial license, whether it's EMI, whether it was PSD, whether it's related to crypto, lately even because of crypto. Well, it's partially right, but partially wrong as well. Because fintech is a technological enabler. So fintech is the technology behind, the technology which facilitates, the technology which even now is automating certain facets of financial services. Now, through fintech, we've seen as well, what is the financial technology part, certain services which maybe 3-4 years ago, they were there, but they were not licensed. Case in point would be crypto or VFA, which we've regulated through a specific ad hoc legislation, mainly because it was facilitated through technology at that time, particularly in essence from DLT, okay? And later on, even Europe replicated the same model through MiCA, okay? So that, yes, it facilitated certain services, but fintech is a technological enabler. As much as it might include facets from blockchain, it might include certain facets from particular software. We have algorithmic trading, okay? Robot traders, they are part of the fintech realm. If you have sophisticated payment gateways, they are part of the fintech realm. I mean, even AI now, and even AI is a very sexy, nice word to have right now, AI fits very squarely within the fintech realm. Within the fintech realm, and I will leave now the floor as well to Paul. Fintech captures predominantly two facets. So we have the fintech servicing side, and that is service and the technological layer providing the service. You have the fintech side as well, subtech, regtech, and comtech, which is predominantly, okay, even though it to a certain extent falls as well within the service side because they are regulated industries, but it is predominantly a regulator's perspective. So that is fintech as well, okay? It stems out of this digital technology, and it is called comtech or subtech.
I think from a fintech perspective, obviously, given the high interest in the industry itself, even the MFSA came up with their own definition. And it falls squarely with what Ian just said, which is effectively a financial an enabler, a technological enabler, which could potentially result in a financial product being provided, which could have adverse risk on the end customer. So I think that's where we are headed. Now, I don't exclude new products, new types of businesses to obviously come into play eventually, which might also continue falling within this definition or become a subset of. One thing which personally I find sort of slightly, I wouldn't say, so Ian mentioned RegTech. To me, for example, RegTech would be those service providers which would support,
such as, for example, AML.
Exactly. Personally, that's the subset I would use for RegTech. When it comes to the other service providers, however, obviously, I mean, they do fall within the licensable category, and given the impact that technology is having on financial services, I think we're going to see more and more the regulator being involved in this kind of sort of services supervision, licensing.
Okay. I think we hear it a lot wherever we go. I mean, even we've traveled together in conferences recently, and we've mentioned a number of times that Malta has positioned itself quite well as a jurisdiction in this sector. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers recently when it comes to MiCA, for example, until a few months ago. Compared to, I believe, Germany and the Netherlands, Malta was faring quite well. I know it's evolving quite quickly now as more and more companies are transitioning and getting their licenses. But I think it's fair to say that Malta has done quite well up to this point, at least, in the sector. What are, in your opinion, the main factors which have contributed to this, and how has Malta managed to attract some of the big names, especially in the crypto space? What do you think?
It's good that you mentioned the evolving MiCA landscape, because I think recently the MFSA issued, I think it was a statistic, whereby Malta was placed in the top 3 jurisdiction. As a top 3 jurisdiction.
It's been a while since I've seen that.
Yes, I don't think it has changed a lot.
Okay.
Because in reality, Malta has sort of also kept on authorizing new MiCA, license holders. One of the main successes, obviously, at least the way I see it, and we actually felt it, is the MFSA's proactiveness in making sure that we have the right framework to be able to actually attract the right kind of profile for the jurisdictions. I mean, sometimes you get people riding the bandwagon and say, oh yes, fine, everybody's going in fintech, so
Let's do the same.
let's do the same. The MFSA at this point in time is not really, or rather the benchmark of the regulator has increased a lot. Also because given certain players that have entered the market, they are obviously more sophisticated, the regulator had to become more sophisticated, and given the proactiveness of the regulator towards the market, it obviously allowed the regulator to understand exactly what is happening. I mean, again, Malta, as in terms of size, is what it is, but having these big players come to Malta obviously doesn't really mean that they are offering the services to the Maltese market. I mean, the accessibility to the EU also played an important part in sort of increasing the, let's say, the spotlight on Malta. Sometimes, even from a negative perspective in terms of politics, because the bigger you grow, the more spotlight you're going to have on the jurisdiction.
That's always.
But that's why the regulator then keeps on becoming even more sophisticated so that we keep up with the market.
Okay. Yeah, so Paul mentioned the regulator as one of the key competitive advantages that we have. What else?
Well, I would tend to agree with Paul. First, given our experience, as I said before, this is not exclusively related to VFA or crypto. EMI, we've been there. ESD, we've been there. We had our own fintech sandbox, which is very important as well.
Yep.
And Malta as well, even when we were thinking about the VFA, even for example, gaming-wise, which is another successful story, we had a sandbox as well with regards to the use of virtual financial assets within the gaming industry, which was quite unique at that time, not only in Europe, but worldwide. I mean, we had, I think, 3 iterations locally. So there, I think from the perspective of somebody who wanted to scale up, invest, Malta looked serious and I think looked extremely interesting. So there is scalability and there's an element of engagement, I agree. But these are not the only issues. As Paul said, we are small, we are cognizant that they are small and that can be a hindrance to a certain extent. Malta never tried, this happened in the EMI and even under the VFA. We could have, but we've never done it. They never went for mass. So even there, I mean, comparisons are obvious, but we're not there trying to compete against Germany, which right now is top of the list, licensing MiCAR, even though they never licensed crypto before, but they are top of the list. There is Netherlands, I think France is. It's, for us, it's irrelevant. Malta's not going for mass, Malta's going for quality. And that is why predominantly as well, very small part, but that is why predominantly we are attracting as well these big outfits. Because we're going for quality, we want quality, and they know that the process is not easy, but we want quality. If you come here and you have quality, you have a regulator, you have an environment, and the environment is very important, who can support you? You have a regulator who understands risk, who understands what you're licensing, okay? And the efforts then can be commensurate as well with you obtaining the license, you launching the service, with a regulator who can work hand in hand with the operator, because that is exactly what a big operator would want. But in this industry particularly, because it's still in its very early days. But aside from that, you have an ecosystem. It's useless having a regulator who knows all this stuff. I mean, they have a top of the notch licensing framework. Okay, they know the risk, they know the industry, but you don't have the parameters, the service providers supporting you. Okay, to a certain extent, enhancing the value proposition. This is exactly what we have in Malta. We have advisors, myself and Paul can attest to this. We advise clients not only with regard to the Maltese territory. I mean, the expertise is there. And this is not only legal. I mean, remember as well, and that's where I did not agree with you with regards to RegTech, because even if you have a RegTech component with DORA and with outsourcing, it's an intrinsic part of your regulatory obligations. But with DORA now, I mean, even the obligations, specific annexes, specific obligations, okay, have expanded.
Yeah.
Even there, Malta, because we tapped technology assurance in this particular area way before even DORA, and DORA was created specifically for crypto and for MiCA. DORA, even though it gathered all the respective financial services industry from out, but to a certain extent harmonizing, DORA was created with its inception is there because of MiCA. Because of when we created the VFA framework, we did not create a framework empower the MFSA in silo. At that time, if you recall correctly, we created the first technology authority in Malta as well, which is the MDIA. We created the first control objectives on DLT, on smart contracts, and we gave as well the tool to the MFSA to make sure that where there are intrinsic risks, okay, tied with the technology from the DLT point of view, from the smart contracts point of view, and later on we've extended that as well on AI recently with the control objectives, even before the AI Act. The authority there could enforce certification, which was voluntary, but the authority could enforce it. And this was way before DORA and all the rest. So the country's predisposition to protect value, to protect the consumer, to enhance the ecosystem was always there.
Has been there for.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so it's not only this is the funny part. Even when they try to portray the success of Malta, the success of Malta is there because of the investment Malta put in all these years in different channels, in different levers.
Stronger the force.
Yeah, exactly. And that is why you have an industry as well who can support these operators when they come to Malta. You're practically replicating what we did in gaming. Why did we flourish? All right, there was tax. I mean, there was a regulator, but there was an ecosystem, and that ecosystem grew. This is the same thing, and I think Paul can relate. We are experiencing, if you do your work properly here, on the fintech front.
I think that's really interesting. And both of you mentioned the regulator, the importance of the regulator when it comes to advantage. Okay, and again, as I mentioned earlier on, while we are not really involved in the licensing process, and you guys are much more hands-on, we do speak to clients during that phase in other separate conversations. And something which intrigues me a lot. So, for example, what I hear is that the preliminary meeting that the MFSA organizes face-to-face is something which clients, prospective license holders really like. The proactiveness is something that they really like. So that's quite interesting and unique. Are we seeing other jurisdictions kind of copy what we're doing? Because I know there are other jurisdictions, without mentioning possibly names, so I might get it wrong, where there was a bit more of a standoffish approach. Are we seeing our competitors or whatever?
I mean, in terms of competitors, I wouldn't really know, but what clients tell us is that there are certain jurisdictions where even to get a meeting with the regulator is either unheard of, or it would take a lot of time to actually get someone to sit down with an applicant to discuss things face to face. So it's a bit like the regulators here and the applicant is here. We were just discussing things across email. So I think, I mean, as you said, clients do love that.
They like it. I've never had a client who said they're not happy with that approach. So, because you can iron out things.
Yes. And nowadays what we're seeing as well is that, because obviously if you're just seeing the licensing part, you have a particular team within the regulator who does licensing.
Yeah.
The project doesn't stop there. When the entity is authorized, the entity then goes onto the supervision team. So now we're even seeing the regulator become a bit more proactive and involving the supervision team in understanding the business model at application stage and even trying to address certain points which could potentially come out during supervisory visit after licensing. So it's not just the MFSA having one team working in a silo. It's the MFSA working together to make sure that even after licensing, an applicant can keep on
Very smart move.
can keep on operating without any hindrance and not tell the MFSA, but you authorized this for me, why are you coming to me now and telling me that there are certain points which are not aligned, which are not according to your expectations. So that's also something positive that we're seeing the regulator do. Apart from that, even the overall interaction through their CEO letters, circulars, that is something which has really improved along the years. And I mean, one of them was issued today
Or
on the limited PI framework. Because obviously there are discussions at EBA level, there are discussions within the MFSA, but nobody actually knows what's happening behind closed doors, and everything sort of runs as like guesswork. So it's good that the MFSA puts things that they decide internally on a piece of paper for the industry to know, so that everybody's aware, everybody's aware of the expectations, and there are no surprises.
The communication of it.
Yeah, so communication is key.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fast evolving.
Yes.
So we spoke a lot about the advantages, the competitive advantages we have, and what we should continue to be doing in effect. When it comes to challenges, when you've been discussing with potential clients who are looking to set up a license here, are there any challenges which you feel Malta has, and if so, is there how can we overcome these challenges? I'm not sure if there's something.
Can I turn this on top of its head? Because I want to touch on what Paul and you were saying.
Sure, of course.
Because you mentioned before competitors. I mean, we are not competing. The European framework, MiCAR-wise, is pretty much harmonized. At the end of the day, we're speaking about European operators, European citizens, okay? So it's extremely important. We're speaking about the European financial stability. That's why you have MiCAR in the first place. So to a certain extent, there's no competition. But there's a difference in perspective. And the difference in perspective is not nascent from MiCAR, okay? The difference in perspective is nascent from the way the MFSA always used to do business. It improved, but it always used to do business on a principle of subsidiarity. That subsidiarity for us is very important. That is the difference. That is why certain people can't understand that you can't replace a local regulator with somebody with a supranational body, because you lose that subsidiarity, you lose that personal touch, you lose that personal as well vision of how the market might risk, of how the regulator might react, of how that can be done in tandem with the operator, so that you mitigate, you minimize the potential risk. That is based on a principle of subsidiarity. It's based on style. It's not a competing factor, it's based on style. But that style, as much as it is a strength, now that style is becoming, to a certain extent, a focal point. It's being perceived, to a certain extent, as a hindrance more than a limitation, because I don't think it's a limitation. Because when you have these regulators who do not have this personal touch, or at least they might have that personal touch with industries they want to protect, because that is another facet. It could be that a regulator like the MFSA is totally service agnostic. There is a regulation that brings value, there's an element of risk, we can meter it, come here, and we'll see whether you're going to get a license. And this can be proved along the board. We have banking licenses, we have EMIs, we have PSDs, investment services. I mean, we've created our own PIFs as well, so it's not only related, okay, to MiCAR or crypto or fintech, and that is the MFSA's approach. You might have other regulators who either don't have that personal touch at all, so their principle, that is how they work, that is their style. So ultimately, if you have somebody, a supranational body, whether it's ESMA, whether it's EBA, taking over for them, it's pretty much the norm. I mean, we never deal with the operators per se, we don't have that per se, so ultimately the principle of subsidiarity is not there. You might have regulators, however, who are selective. For example, see the crypto MiCAR industry as something which they are not prepared for.
Not comfortable.
Yeah, not comfortable with for the time being. So for them, that I'd rather not have the same interface I have with my banks, the same interface I have with my credit institutions. Okay, so even there's a differentiation. I think Malta, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, seldomly follows that approach. There is that personal relationship, That has value, okay? It has value as well for a regulator because a regulator cannot function if they don't have the relationship with an operator, but that candid relationship, it's not that, it's like a father and son. But ultimately, there needs to be that relationship, okay? And that relationship as well is seen with the way the MFSA regulates. We have a lot of the legislation now coming out. Either it's not legislation directly to the CEO that there's an element of transparency and exactly what the MFSA would like. But then a lot of regulatory handbooks, that it's easy, it's more flexible, and the MFSA, even though we're quite small, I mean 900 people, small, but they can react to the exigencies of the industry. That in other countries is being seen, since it is attractive, because it is attractive, but it's being seen as, listen, I mean, you're cutting corners, it's not cutting corners. So there we might face, like we're facing now, certain problematics from abroad. I don't think that should be the case, because other than that, then limitations, if you tell me, listen, yeah, but we're small employees. I mean, that is a prevalent problem in Europe with nomadicity. At the end of the day, with with the digital gap being always, to a certain extent, emarginated, I think that till now, yes, we had issues, but we always managed to solve them. Corporate-wise, I don't think we have an issue. I mean, we've been in this industry for longer than the financial service, so corporate has always worked perfectly well here. I think more than that, quite honestly, I mean, we just need, and I will leave Paul, I mean, we just need to meet our own scalability, but it's a problem which is not atypical to this industry per se.
I think what I would add is that we need to be a bit mindful as well, not to be victims of our own success. In the sense that we've seen other jurisdictions having inflows in certain sectors. They were quite keen and quite open to attract volume, and this takes us back to what we were talking about earlier. We shouldn't really focus on volume but on quality. Having quality will also attract the jurisdiction.
Selectivity.
Yes.
And are we still being as selective as we were earlier?
I think, given that the benchmark and the thresholds at the level of the regulator have increased, well, they expect a certain level of substance, a certain level of technology, of preparedness.
It's a difficult balancing act.
Yes,
when
yes.
It's easy to get carried away slightly.
Yes.
So remaining selective at all times.
And to be honest, saying victims of our own success, even because if there is a huge flow, it might affect licensing applications. It might also affect resources, both from a regulator's perspective, because again, it doesn't stop at licensing, you need to supervise. It also affects the applicants themselves, because, okay, we have an infrastructure, we have service providers who are able to support the industry, but I mean, human resources are what they are. So extra costs. So we need to be a bit mindful of that.
Yeah,
but otherwise,
mindful from our end also. For example, we're seeing this. Okay, there's a number of new licenses which are being issued as we go along. Each license requires certain
amount of time. Yes.
appointments. Now, at the moment, we're fine, but there will be a time, I guess. I mean, there's the limited amount of pool of talent there is in Malta as what it is. You can't keep on. So possibly we'll be seeing more expats moving here, specifically in this space. Okay. So maybe a question. So what if we have? What would your advice be to somebody? So somebody who's just shopping around, looking for a jurisdiction, and he feels that Malta is top of the list or close to that. What would your advice be to a potential license holder to be prepared before actually starting the process, the license process? What would your advice be?
I think we've reached a stage where we don't even advise. Usually it's different from the VFA, and I can relate, and I think even more. VFA, you need to, you're coming from an industry which was unregulated, there was no regulation, usually subsidized by people who've made tons of money, in literally a fortnight.
Yeah.
So that was extremely difficult, even for you to try to guide them to why why you need legislation, why ours is better, why that is not legislation, why you're going to have problems. And here it's even, let's mention as well the FIU here. Because another, I think, very important regulator, which emancipated according to the needs of this country, and for the sector was the FIU. I mean, the level of detail, the level of stealth that the FIU has built over the years, particularly on crypto. Let's remember that crypto, we've had created, that time we were grey listed, the first business risk assessment even before AML5 came along and regulated crypto, even before the travel rule for crypto. We've done it first. Trust me, I was involved. So we've done it first. I mean, we've done several things, and it's not we've done it first, we've built upon it, they have a capacity. I mean, now they are doing as well international conferences specifically related, where you have Interpol, where you have Europol, where you have all these big authorities coming here to Malta, so they share the knowledge. I mean, so even that is a value added, and we need to mention it as well, okay? But I think we've reached the juncture where if somebody comes knocking at your door, more than telling you, listen, I want, okay, sometimes you need to have, for example, jurisdiction X, you might tell them, listen, forget it, you will not, that is not a license, you will definitely not get a license by, so you're already in trouble because you can't provide me, okay? But other than that, I mean, we don't pitch on tax, that's an old story, we don't even go there any longer. Sometimes it's much more, for example, there's ourselves or Ganado, I choose Ganado, not us, or vice versa. No, I think no, the point I wanted to make is that the maturity of the requests we're seeing, the maturity of the operators we're seeing, it seldomly comes
They
to
don't
us.
need your advice on
It depends, but not that much, no, not
Not much
that
at
much.
all.
And it comes through word of mouth, because again, you'll have all these big players being in Malta. They would have experienced the level of I would say sophistication at this stage in Malta. They would have experienced how Malta's ecosystem. And I mean, we think that Malta, being a small jurisdiction, everyone knows everyone, so it's word of mouth. It happens globally.
Yeah.
So even people with entity X who are already in Malta, they speak highly of Malta to people at entity Y, who would then start considering getting a license and coming to Malta. So there would have already been a level of preparedness and a level of education in terms of what can Malta offer to
It's
these
good to
players.
hear that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm quite conscious of time, so maybe one final concluding remark from your end. Where do you see the industry going in the next few years? If something you can answer, I'm not sure there is. Ian, I'm sure can answer as well. What?
I think both of us can answer.
Yes, both of us can answer that.
Shall I answer it with my glasses on?
What do you think, Paul?
No, I mean, where are we headed? Obviously, I would expect more regulation. I would expect more interaction by the regulator as time goes by. And again, given the types of products we're seeing out in the market, there's obviously going to be quite some challenges, I think, to actually box these types of products into the appropriate legislation for the regulator to feel comfortable, because obviously the regulators tend to be reactive rather than proactive. So whenever a new product comes into play, there's always a bit of a power struggle, I would say, between the players wanting to go to market yesterday and the regulator wanting to feel comfortable, holding back in the interest of the consumer. So it's something which I would expect to see in the coming years.
Well, I would tend to build on what Paul said, because I agree totally with him. I think we are at an inflection point. And this inflection point is predominantly led by innovation and technology. And in certain instances, there would be as well problematics with regulation. So if we keep on with our pace, the principle of subsidiarity that has always been, I think, a value added for Malta, that's very important given our size, okay? You give value as well to the operator who comes here and invests in Malta. but as well our predisposition towards innovation. Malta has never shied away. I mean, we've tried things which other countries did not even fathom. There was a risk, we were criticized, but we've done it. Speaking about innovation, so now tokenization, I believe, will become more mainstream. So from simple, cryptocurrencies, we're moving to stable coins. Art, we just have it on paper. I did not see ART as yet. Okay, so far no. But we're seeing as well tokenized bonds, more EFTs. So tokenization will become mainstream. STOs, okay, security tokens. Way back in 2013, 2014, the MFSA was one of the first authorities to write a conceptual paper on STOs. So we need to continue building up on that particular wave. I think as long as we do that, given where the market is going, the more technology innovation intersects, more AI, even the MFSA with the MDI now is preparing on AI, and I told you before, we are as well crafting an AI and fintech strategy. I think the more that intersection becomes closer, the more we're going to see services consolidating as well. So you have investment services, you have the MiCA of this world, crypto, you have EMIs, you have payment institutions. We are already witnessing this as we speak. And the more Malta keeps an open eye towards technology, innovation, and regulation, okay? I think with that predisposition, our market can only flourish. We need to keep our feet quite steady on the ground, keep humble, but ultimately I think we have all the right ingredients to keep on flourishing within this particular sector.
Thanks a lot. Thanks Ian, thanks Paul, and thank you for joining us for our first episode. We look forward to seeing you to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.